The stage lights flared like 1,000 suns, but Leo barely noticed them. His small hands gripped the microphone as if it were the last piece of his world still holding him together. He was 12, barefoot in heart, clothed in a too big grey shirt and carrying more weight in his voice than most men twice his age. The music began, soft, piano. Then came his voice, fragile at first, like a whisper through broken windows. But it grew, and with each note, Leo peeled open the pain buried in his chest. "I'll stand by you, even when the rain falls." The audience froze. Eyes widened. The whispers stopped. It wasn't just a song, it was a cry, a prayer, a child asking the world to save the only person who's ever loved him. In the front row, a woman covered her mouth, trembling. Near the judges' table, even the usually chatty backstage crew leaned in. One judge blinked back tears. Another lowered her pen, stunned. But Daniel Cole didn't flinch, at least not on the outside. He sat upright, hands clasped, lips tight, yet beneath the table his fingers quivered, his throat bobbed. Something about that voice, no, that boy, was scraping at memories he thought were buried. Then came the final note, pure, shattering. And when silence returned, it didn't last long. The hall erupted. Everyone stood. Everyone except Daniel. He didn't clap. He couldn't. He was staring at Leo like the boy had just ripped a hole in time. Leo bowed, eyes scanning for his mother's face in his imagination, then walked slowly off the stage. That's when Daniel stood up, eyes burning. "I need a minute," he muttered. Without waiting for approval, he walked off the panel and straight into the past. The backstage corridor was narrow, almost suffocating, dimly lit with overhead lights that buzzed faintly. Leo's feet shuffled across the cold tiles as he walked, arms folded tightly across his chest, heart still racing from the stage. He hadn't expected the applause. He hadn't expected to feel like maybe he mattered. All he wanted now was to find somewhere quiet and call his mother. But just as he turned a corner, he slammed into someone, a man. Leo staggered back, startled. "Sorry, I didn't—" The man didn't respond. He just stood there, tall, dark suit, jaw clenched, eyes wide. Daniel Cole, one of the judges. His face was pale, unreadable, except for the tremble in his lips and the way his hands twitched slightly at his sides. Leo tilted his head. "Are you okay, sir?" Daniel blinked like he'd just come out of a trance. "What's your name?" His voice cracked. "Your full name?" Leo hesitated. The question felt strange, personal. Still, he answered, Leo Chukwuma." Daniel sucked in a breath, like the air had just been punched from his lungs. "And your mother?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Her name?" Leo frowned now. Maria Rios. "Why are you asking?" Daniel's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. His chest rose and fell too quickly. I think I might be your father." Everything around Leo seemed to blur. "What?" "I didn't know," Daniel said quickly, nervously. "I didn't know Maria was pregnant, I swear. If I had—" "You're lying," Leo snapped. His voice wasn't angry, it was shaking, wounded. "You're just saying that because I sang well, because people liked me." "No, that's not—" "You waited 12 years to say this? On a show? You think that's okay?" Daniel took a small step forward, desperate. "Leo, please!" But Leo was already backing away, eyes full of hurt. "Don't call me that." He turned and ran, sprinting down the hallway, disappearing through a side door. From the shadows, Ngozi, one of the producers, had seen everything. Her eyes followed the boy, then slowly turned to the man still standing frozen in the hallway, his past finally catching up to him. Lagos, 13 years ago, smelled of wet clay, burning suya, and promise. Back then, Daniel wasn't the untouchable judge in a tailored navy suit. He was just a hungry music producer with oversized headphones and a pocket full of cassette tapes. And Maria was magic. She painted from a rooftop in Yaba, barefoot and bold, smudged in color like a living canvas. Her laughter came easy. Her eyes held secrets, and she loved him with a tenderness that scared them both. They met at a youth art show. She painted a boy on fire. He handed her a beat that sounded like rainfall. That night, they didn't just fall in love, they collided. For 2 years, they were inseparable. She painted while he produced. They talked about forever like it was something they could touch. He told her, "One day the world's going to hear my sound, but I want you to see it first." But then came the call. An American label, big names, fast money, worldwide stage. But there was a catch. "We don't want baggage," the exec had said. "No baby mamas, no hometown girlfriends, no drama. You want the deal? You disappear from that side of your life." Daniel didn't even say goodbye. He left on a Thursday. Maria called his number for weeks, then months. Left voice notes, sent letters, all unanswered. She painted less, smiled less, but when she found out she was pregnant, she didn't cry. She just whispered, "You'll have my name, little one. We don't need him." She raised Leo alone, on her paintings, odd jobs, and relentless hope. She never badmouthed Daniel, just told Leo, "He was someone I once knew, someone who didn't know how to stay." And every night she prayed he'd never have to find out what abandonment truly cost. The applause still echoed somewhere in the distance, but Leo couldn't hear it anymore. He sat curled up in the far corner of a dusty backstage storage room, hugging his knees, his face buried in his arms. His breath came in short, panicked bursts. Everything felt upside down. A soft knock came at the door, followed by careful footsteps. Ngozi, the producer who'd seen it all, stepped in quietly. She knelt beside him, not saying a word at first, just offering a bottle of water and a silence that didn't demand anything from him. Leo finally looked up, his eyes glassy. "Why would someone pretend to be my father?" he asked, his voice small. "Why now?" Ngozi sighed gently. "People show up for all kinds of reasons, but not all of them are pretending." He stared at her. "I don't need a stranger walking into my life and claiming me just because I can sing." "You don't," she said softly. "But sometimes the truth doesn't knock politely. It just shows up." Outside the room, Daniel stood still, pacing the floor like a man on trial. He didn't knock, didn't call out. He just waited, hands shaking, eyes fixed on the closed door, terrified he'd already lost his only chance. Miles away, in a government hospital room dimly lit by flickering fluorescent bulbs, Maria Rios lay propped up in bed, an IV snaked from her arm. Her skin looked pale, her lips dry, but her eyes, those eyes, were wide with disbelief. The TV screen above her displayed the replay of Leo's performance. And then the camera panned to Daniel's face. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. She gasped, "Oh God, he found him!" Her mind spiraled back to that night years ago, when she sat Leo down under a mosquito net and told him the truth. "Your father was someone special," she had said, voice trembling. "But he wasn't ready to be a father, so I became both." Now, as her past and present collided on national television, Maria realized something terrifying. Ready or not, Daniel was here and nothing would ever be the same again. The knock came just after 9 p.m. Maria sat quietly on the worn-out couch in her small, dimly lit apartment, a shawl draped over her shoulders, breathing slow and shallow. She knew who it was before she even stood up. Her bones told her. Her heart had already prepared for it. She shuffled to the door, her thin fingers unlocking it with practiced care. When it swung open, there he was, Daniel Cole. The man she had loved, the man who had vanished. She didn't flinch, her voice was soft but steady. "You saw him." Daniel looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were tired, wet at the corners. "Maria." She stepped aside and let him in. The silence that followed was dense. They sat across from each other, a chipped table between them. Her breathing was labored, but her gaze was clear. "He looks like you," she said finally. Daniel nodded. "I didn't know, Maria. You have to believe me." She let out a weak laugh, the kind that didn't carry joy. "I sent a letter, Daniel, after he was born. I didn't know where you were, but I sent it anyway." He blinked. "I never got it." "You were already a star by then. Too big for letters from Nigeria." Daniel lowered his head. "I should have come back. I was young, stupid. I thought leaving would hurt less than choosing." "Leo doesn't need you to feel sorry," she said, her voice hardening. He needs someone who stays, someone who doesn't vanish after the stage lights fade. Daniel leaned forward, eyes pleading. Let me fix what I broke. I can't erase the past, but I can be present now. I can support you, him, both of you. Just give me the chance. Maria studied him for a long, painful beat. She looked so tired, so far from the girl who once painted barefoot on rooftops, but her spirit still flickered behind her eyes. I don't care about your money, Daniel, she whispered. I care about whether you'll still be around when he's angry, confused, or silent. Can you handle that? He didn't answer right away. He just reached across the table and took her hand. Leo sat alone on the edge of the stage, legs dangling, the auditorium dim and quiet, except for the faint hum of overhead lights. The air was different now. He should have felt excited. Tomorrow was the grand finale, but all he felt was exhaustion. Not the kind that sleep could fix, the kind that settled in the chest, where confusion and pain made a home. He stared at the empty seats. His voice didn't feel like his anymore. It felt heavy, tangled with things he didn't ask for. Maybe I should quit, he thought. Footsteps echoed behind him. He didn't turn, but the voice that followed was warm, steady. You thinking of throwing it away? It was Judge Iretti, the oldest on the panel. She sat beside him without asking. Leo shrugged. I don't know what I'm singing for anymore. Yes, you do, she said gently. You came here to fight for your mother. Don't let confusion dim your voice. Not now. Not when you've already lit a fire in people's hearts. Leo looked down at his hands, then nodded slowly. He didn't speak, but she saw the decision forming in his silence. Later that evening, backstage before rehearsal, a producer handed him a phone. It's from your mom. Leo pressed play. Maria's face appeared, pale but smiling. My darling boy, she said, her voice soft. I don't know what life has thrown at you these past few days, but I need you to remember something. You were always enough. Whether he stays or goes, whether he's your father or just a stranger in a suit, you, Leo, are everything I ever needed. Leo's throat tightened. Out on stage, during rehearsal, he sang quietly to himself. Daniel watched from the wings, hidden in the shadows, hands clasped, tears in his eyes. He didn't move, didn't speak. But the other judges noticed. They exchanged glances. Something was off with Daniel Cole. And tomorrow, when the cameras rolled, the world would find out exactly what it was. The tension in the air was sharp enough to slice through. Just minutes before the live finale, Daniel was pulled aside by a stern-faced producer. They led him to a back office where two executives sat waiting, arms crossed, expressions grave. We know, one of them said flatly. Daniel's heartbeat thudded in his ears. Know what? The boy, Leo, he's your son. Silence. The other leaned forward. We don't care how touching the story is. If you make a scene, if you go off script and make some emotional reveal, we will pull you from this panel mid-show. Daniel clenched his jaw. You'd rather protect ratings than a moment of truth? We're protecting the contract you signed. You're here as a judge, not a father. The words stung more than he expected. He left the room with fists balled and breath shaky. The hallway felt colder, heavier. As stagehands counted down to showtime, Daniel moved like a man dragging chains behind him. 3 minutes. 2. 1. The cameras rolled. Lights flared. The crowd erupted. Daniel took his seat without a word. His suit was immaculate, his face unreadable, but his heart was splitting open. Then the curtain lifted. Leo walked onto the stage, his steps slow but deliberate, shoulders square, gaze steady. He looked directly at Daniel. The boy didn't flinch. Neither did the man. They stared, father and son, through the roar of the crowd, through the blinding lights, through 12 years of absence and a single moment that refused to be ignored. The host's voice echoed across the hall, announcing the final performance. The music began, but before Leo sang the first note, Daniel's hand moved, not toward his buzzer, but toward the mic. The first note slipped from Leo's lips, soft and trembling. Daniel sat motionless, but his lips moved, silently echoing the words, word for word. Lyrics Maria had once scribbled in a tattered journal. Leo's brows furrowed mid-song, his eyes locking with Daniel's. How did he know the lyrics? One tear slid down Daniel's cheek. The host, caught off guard, glanced between them. The crowd was oblivious, but something electric passed between father and son. The music swelled toward its final crescendo. And just before Leo hit the last note, Daniel reached up, removed his earpiece, and slowly rose to his feet. What happens next will leave you speechless. Don't miss part 3. Hit the subscribe button now so you're the first to find out.